Welcome to the Out of Office podcast. Join us as we explore the real and often messy side of behaviour at work. Hosted by me, Jonathan Cannon. I'm a business psychologist here at Lumina Learning, and our CEO, Dr. Stewart Desson. We're joined here today by Gavin Presman, who's a best-selling author of multiple books on selling and negotiating, and the founder of Inspire. Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was thinking the other day about you get sales trainers and stuff like that. And my first kind of inclination when I see someone call themselves a sales trainer is, have you actually sold anything, right? Mm-hmm. Or are you just selling yourself as a sales trainer, right? So that's always the first thing that comes to mind is, what credentials does someone need to have to be able to say, I've done this, I'm able to teach people how to sell or how to be an effective salesperson.
So I started selling when I was a kid, actually. I started selling in the markets. So those guys that do the kitchen slicers and the car polish and those kind of demonstrations. Yeah. When I was...
You'll be there with your spiel, giving it some,
exactly.
Spilling stuff, wiping it up.
Exactly. Yeah. I've done that, and I've literally done it all over the world. I've done it in Australia, and I've done it in Britain, and I've done it a bit in America. So I have got some experience selling. But the interesting thing for me is the reason I wanted that job so much. So I literally bribed a guy in the playground to get a job next to the woman selling the kitchen slicers as her assistant. I bribed him with an invite to my bar mitzvah, because I wasn't really going to invite him to the party. I invited him in exchange for, because everybody wanted this job in the playground. Everyone wanted this job. I got the job.
In that environment as well, it's so transient. You need to be able to get someone's attention in the first place. They need a reason to stop and look at whatever it is you're selling.
Yeah.
How'd you do that in the first place? So easy just to walk past thinking, it's a bit of tap they're selling.
I mean, generally, just by going into it, that's actually how we'd start, by going into it.
Yeah.
And with most of the products that we'd sell, like kitchen slicers or super chamois or those kind of things, there was a lot to do. But we had this one product, and I'm not sure whether we're going off track. We definitely are.
No, you're
right. We had this one product called the A2000. It was a can of highly compressed air. Right. The claim was it would clear like blocks in your sink, right? So that's what it was. Highly compressed air.
Yeah. Put it in your sink.
Right. In order to demonstrate, there's only one thing you could do, right? Just we had a sink, a clear U-bend, and you just would put hair and bits of carrot and bits of fat, and you'd stuff it down this thing and just be building it up, and people would see it build up. And as I say, if you demonstrate a kitchen slicer, you'll do crisps, you'll do chips, you'll do coleslaw, and every time you'll build that's how you build the audience. In this case, you're just stuffing stuff in, and the idea is you have to get people really tightly close to the front,
right?
Because people don't want to feel that they can leave. So you're constantly saying, "Can I step forward? Yeah, and just have a look at this. Yeah, and I'm just putting that in. Yes." And what we'd do with this particular demonstration was I would go to do it, and then I'd kind of stop, and then I'd do a little bit more, and then I'd go to do it, and then I'd stop, and then do a little bit more. And then the piece of resistance was you'd get somebody from the audience, and you'd usually get someone as infirm as possible. So you'd say, anyone can use this. You could be left-handed, right-handed, you could be cack-handed. Look, excuse me, love, how old are you? 82? Come here, I want to show you that anyone can use this. Yeah? If you've got an old mother at home and you're worried about her pipes, this is the one for you. So we got this old lady, and I just guide her to push it down. And she does push it down, but some bubbles come up because I've kind of been getting a bit enthusiastic, and I've blocked the sink a bit too much. Right? So some bubbles come down. So I said, you need to push a little bit harder, love. Right? So I now put my hand on top of hers and push down, and more bubbles come up, and they're now splashing me and her. I then think I've really got to push a little bit harder, and I then push down, and I can feel her hand kind of crack, maybe break.
Oh my God!
At this point, it doesn't bubble up, but the whole U-bend breaks apart. It's one of those. It breaks apart with carrots and hair and fat exploding all over my feet and this old lady's
dress and everything. I mean, I've got to say, you're not, when people talk about, sales as, the guy at the car boot sale, flogging, useless talent, you're not giving it a very good name right now,
No,
are you?
I'm really not. I'm really not. The interesting thing was I didn't sell any immediately.
Did it actually work, that thing, by the way?
I have no idea. I mean, it definitely cleared U-bends.
What?
I was 17 at the time.
Okay.
And I did actually, my career went down before it went up.
Really?
Because I then went into photocopier and fax sales. I was selling those things, which we weren't really selling photocopiers or faxes. We were selling financial contracts to people that some people are probably still paying for today.
Right.
But the interesting thing was nobody bought one, and then someone from the back came and bought one, and then another person from the back came and bought one, and then someone from the back came and gave me his business card and said, "Will you come and work for me?" He wanted me to work for him, weird enough, selling photocopiers.
You saw something.
I did sell something. And I clearly did something. But that's not what we're here to talk about, because that's not the kind of selling that we currently.
Yeah. We've evolved from that.
We've definitely evolved.
But you always think, when I think about a salesperson, is that the guy on the market is still loud, brash, confident, right? But what you describe is kind of the flip side of that is the listening, asking questions, showing genuine interest there. And I guess, is that kind of an evolution of what a salesperson is, do you think, in the past, where, it is the loudest voice, the most confident voice sells, but we're moving towards somewhere where you need to be genuinely, show that you understand needs, show that you can connect, show that you're adding value. Is that where we're moving, or does it still depend on the industry or what you're selling?
I think it could be circumstantial, but I think that what we're seeing is that as we have more data on what actually moves, particularly I'm clearly influenced by the companies that I work with that have a lot of data. And when I say I have a lot of data, they're using Salesforce, so they're able to see things like, and they're also looking at retention and referrals and internal referrals and how wide the network is. And there's like some of the data that you see organizations are able to. So as you get that, you realize, for example, when I maybe was even a lone wolf myself, I was celebrated as a lone wolf, but people weren't really looking at the long-term impact of my behavior. Whereas nowadays, the data is there for everyone to see. What's the long-term impact of somebody who doesn't listen to instructions and salespeople things they don't need, right? And if you sell HSBC, a software system that they don't really need, then in 3 years' time, you'll be out. And it might be 3 years and you may have got £6 million, but you've lost 20. And I think that therefore...
Why have you lost 20?
Well, you've lost 20 because you haven't got HSBC as a customer for 20 years, as opposed to you've had them for 3 years selling them the wrong thing. Whereas if you'd done the right thing, you might have had them for 20 years.
But then the argument to that is, what if you don't have the right thing and you could sell them the wrong thing and get 6 million or nothing?
Yeah. I mean, that's the argument. The challenge is in the sophistication of the kind of the cycles you've got now, is you're unlikely to win if you're pitching the wrong thing. You might win. You're unlikely to.
Yeah.
So I think
my take is it's your philosophy, actually, and I'm kind of with you. Yeah. But your philosophy is you kind of want to do good. You want to help people meet their unmet needs. That's just what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, philosophy first. I think you've rationalized it second, that it's also good for people and good for business, which it probably is in your clients.
Yeah. And I suppose, look, I ask people when we go in sales training, how many of you wanted to be in sales? I often say, how many of you have been at college? Everyone puts their hand up. University, but how many, when you were doing your degree, were thinking, I'm going to have a career in sales? Very few people put their hand up. And we even get this situation, some people lie about what they do. And some businesses do that in the labeling of their, they call them business development when they're actually sales, I tell this story in my book. I once had a young lady working for me, and this is in the days when we had sales assistants, and you were out to our sales assistants to do what you liked, really. They were just learning the ropes. Now, this particular sales assistant wanted to be a sales exec, had told me in her review, we were working towards it. And the fax machine had broken. This is how long ago it was, right? So the fax machine's broken, and I actually had to get her to go and just take a document down to Soho Square. And at the same time, I had some dry cleaning to get. So I asked her to collect my dry cleaning. And while she's doing this job, her mum calls. I know it's her mum. She's got a very posh voice, right? And her mum calls and says, "Can I speak to?" I'm not going to say her name. And I say she's not here. And I just think at the time, what I'm going to do, because I know it's her mum, I'm not going to say she's off, doing errands for me. She's the replacement of the fax machine today. I say she's out on a sales presentation because I think I'm going to promote her. I'm going to, elevate her in her mum's eyes. So she's developing the career she's
Laudable.
Yeah. Anyway, the phone went a bit silent when I said that, and I didn't really think much of it until the next day. This lady comes in and she's furious. She looks at me and says, "What did you tell my mum?" I said, "I don't know. What said you about doing a presentation on a call?" She said, "You told her I was in sales, didn't you?" Which was incredible. Like, I didn't know it was a secret, but she had told her mum. Her mum thought she was handing the records to Chris Tarrant. Like, that's what she thought. She thought she was in the we were called media, sales, and marketing. She thought she was in some kind of marketing function. Right? But sales.
So marketing's cool, but sales is not. Yeah. At least in the eyes of her mum.
Now, my point is that if you can get people who think sales is a dirty word to enjoy it, and part of being able to do that is to insist on them that they're not manipulating, that they don't have to lie, that they don't have to tell people things they don't want. If you can do that, which is what that's what I'm intending to do, then it's a valuable exercise. Mm. And I think Stuart's right. It's more that I believe that's the right thing to do, and I can see it working. And I also suspect that there have been businesses that I've met in my days where I haven't pitched so hard and they haven't lent in so much, because actually their philosophy is one of scarcity. There isn't enough in the world, and therefore we should go and get as much of it as we can. And we should train people to always be closing. I just tend not to win those engagements.
Yeah.
So Gavin, I'm curious because you've described how you started out in sales early in life, kind of on markets at the sharp end and so on, and your career's evolved. At some point, you discovered personality in the sales process, either the personality of the person that you're selling to, or maybe even your own personality and self-awareness around that. Just describe that process to me, what happened and where you've arrived at now.
Well, it's funny. It's nice the way you frame it, because the way I discovered it was much more about the personality of the buyer. Mm-hmm. I was at Capital Radio. We had a great HR team that sent us on all sorts of trainings, and one of the trainings they sent us on was a negotiation training with this wonderful woman called Sandra Proctor. She was a Scottish woman. She used to be, I think, the sales director of the Glasgow Herald. And she was really sharp, and she had a beautiful assistant who was an ex-flight attendant, Nigel, who was lovely. And they did this very powerful sales negotiation training. She taught us loads about structure. But the one bit that I remembered that really blew my mind was, in the afternoon, on the first day, she put how old it was. She put an overhead projector up.
I remember those things.
Right, you remember overhead projector?
You've seen those things.
I have.
So they put an overhead projector, and it was basically a 4-type model. And she said there are 4 types of buyer you will discover. You will discover there's an analytical buyer, there's a driving buyer, there's an amiable buyer, and we would recognise that social.
And
styles.
an expressive. I've heard that one as well.
Yeah. So. And basically, she said, before you negotiate with anybody, you should work out what kind of buyer they are and then adapt. And I remember watching it and just thinking, Yeah, too right. How did I learn this before? Why has no one told me this?
So before, were you just kind of going into it
I
blind
literally-
and doing your thing? And
I just didn't know that. I never thought about. I literally never thought about these distinctions.
yeah.
And it still amazes me. I mean, I train people today. When I showed them the idea of personality, they're like, I never thought about that. Oh, that's why my wife winds me up so much. Oh, that's why my boss is,
Do you think most people don't do it kind of naturally, though?
They do it naturally. They
Yeah.
100% do it naturally. This is the thing, Jonathan. They only do it naturally when they have the capacity to do it naturally. That means when they aren't under time pressure, when they aren't stressed. That's not very much at work nowadays.
Yeah.
So yes, in society, when we were hunter-gatherers and there was only 80 of us wandering around the plains, yeah, we adapted and connected. We didn't need any labelling systems. But that labelling system, and it really was a labelling system, right? And I got a photocopy of that slide in my pack. I actually took the photocopy out because it was a binder. I carried that around with me. I'm not carried it around, but I had it on my desk. I used it in negotiation preparation every single time for years. And that was the introduction for me. Fortunately, a few years later, we started another business called EMAP On Air, and we were now in the EMAP camp, and training was very important to EMAP. When we launched EMAP On Air, there was a commitment to the amount that we'd actually invest in each individual. I think it was 2% we were giving. 2% of what, I don't know, but it was 2%. And Sandra Fox wouldn't be happy because she'd say, if you talk percentages in negotiation, she'd go like this. But if anyone said percentages, she'd go like this, because you never should talk percentages, you always talk numbers.
Okay, what's wrong with percentages?
Well, if you think about it, like, you want to know what's the actual number that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a bit abstract, is it?
So
It's
if
one
I
step
say,
removed.
Yeah, if I say I'll give you 2% off, well, how much? She'd go click, click, click. I still remember it. That's why she was a brilliant trainer, because she just had these little tools that you're triggered to how much money are we actually talking about in this negotiation. That's an important thing to say, and why would it be around 2% on? And how much money are we taking off, or are we adding? But in EMAP, we then took it a little bit further, because EMAP was very into management training. By the time I went on my first management training, I was a manager, a very poor manager. I found it quite difficult to manage people. I had some very difficult people in my group. One really difficult. He was like a bit of a lone wolf. He was really, really difficult to manage. It was unmanageable, I would say. I went on this training, and they trained us MBTI, which you'll know, right? Now, whatever criticism you've got of MBTI, it's a 16.
So you moved on from 4 quadrants
to 16. Yeah,
Okay,
I went 16.
16
right.
boxes.
So we went 16. But the thing is, I went on this management training. I realised, again, a blinding moment for me. This guy is not difficult. This guy is different.
Just different, yeah.
It was amazing for me. It was literally. I mean, it was on our scale, big picture versus down to earth. He and a bit more discipline than me. So he just needed detail, and he needed structure. I didn't need detail. I like the big picture. I didn't need structure. So you can imagine, I was the nightmare manager. He was the nightmare member of the team. But it totally shifted. I literally got back. I mean, this is how they used to give us these They gave us these booklets. I don't remember the booklets.
I do.
They gave you the booklets, and the booklet would describe this personality. And I just thought, this is me, right? So I gave it to this person. He read it, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is why." And that was as simple as that. So. And I'll tell you, and the next stage in our evolution was that a wonderful woman called, I think it was Jill Ford, but I remember one of the HR directors introduced us to a more sophisticated 4-colour model, a disc type model. But ultimately it was still a typing model, but it was much more sophisticated. And when we launched EMAP On Air, we got everybody trained in it. In fact, and I was so involved in that process that I ended up in the long term becoming a trainer of it. And everybody in the organisation, not just the salespeople, everyone in the organisation, because we believe that we were called EMAP On Air, and it was all about listening. Our values were listening. And we were like, you can't listen unless you understand yourself. And you can't listen if you're not, something to listen for is who they are as a person. So we did that. And I'll tell the final leg of the story because it's how I came to meet Stewart. I eventually left EMAP. And we built quite a good business on my own, and then with the company that trained me at EMAP, Apex Training, and we built a good business there. Then eventually I went out on my own with Inspire.
How do you reconcile that, though, when a lot of salespeople are rewarded by how much they sell, how many calls they make, how many meetings they book, not by the quality of the relationship or how many years they stay on as a client? I mean,
but in the old days, we were taught always be closing, and nowadays we're taught. Well, we're not taught, but in our curriculum, we use the book by Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human. It's a brilliant book, and he proposes a new ABC for selling, and the new ABC is attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. And so he had to use the ABC.
Of course.
Just run through those three. Attunement.
So attunement,
yeah,
like the ability to connect deeply. Everything we do at Lumina is about attunement. It's about understanding others.
Are we attuned right now?
Yes, we're attuned. And interestingly, I said, are we starting the podcast earlier?
Yeah.
You had this beautiful way of us just naturally talking, so we started to be attuned. But attunement is more than just being attuned on a human level. It's understanding people's needs. It's understanding their personality styles, it's how they like to buy, everything.
Yeah.
Attunement is number one skill of a salesperson. Great salespeople do that. Interestingly, people who are super thick-skinned don't necessarily do that bit very well.
But rhino their way
they
through
just
it.
rhino their way through it. Buoyancy, we would probably call resilience.
Okay.
Yeah. He used the word buoyancy because it fits with ABC.
Nice word.
But it's a lovely idea also that you however much you're dragged down, you'll
bounce back harder.
Bounce back up.
Yeah.
And it seems that really good salespeople don't care about people saying no. In fact, really great salespeople are looking for early no's. Right? It's because whereas we were taught in the old days, well, it's a qualification process, and you're trying to find people to say yes. Nowadays, I'm trying to find people to say no. Say no
because you don't want to spend more time with them if it's not a real need.
Yeah, let's work out whether they have a need, so we can sell with clarity. And what see clarity is being really clear about your objectives, being clear about the customer's objectives, saying things in a concise way. And those three things, when Daniel Pink looks at it, and his overall philosophy is sales is such a human endeavor. It's something so important to the functioning of society, particularly a capitalist society. Things need to be sold. And not just services and goods, but ideas need to be sold. And we do that through understanding, attunement, not worrying about the no, being clear.
Does that need you as a salesperson to be 100% behind that what you're selling, you genuinely believe in? You're talking about, Stewart, with Lumina, you genuinely see the difference it makes. If you're selling your super chamois, you genuinely think that it can clean up any mess.
It simply can.
But so does that require then for the salesperson to be 100% behind what they are selling to be able to, have that attunement, the buoyancy, the clarity around it?
I think you're going to have real problems if you don't have belief. And I say at the beginning of our programs, look, if you don't believe in this product, if you don't think this meets people's needs out there, this course isn't going to work for you. I think I say it in the front of my book. There's just no point in trying to apply the techniques of ethical selling when you don't believe in the product. Now, fortunately, there are enough people out there and there are enough products out there that actually there should be an audience that meets every product that's being manufactured. I mean, if it's being manufactured, someone's invested in, there must be a need somewhere. But the only way you're going to sell something you don't believe in is through manipulation. In the small world we operate in, we just haven't got time for that.
If I was a sales manager, then I'm hiring into my sales team, and you're saying, it's you're going to have problems if the person you're hiring doesn't believe in what you're selling. How do I find someone who believes in what I'm selling?
This is a lot of the technology businesses I work for example, the software businesses I work for, they often take engineers and move them into a sales role because they really understand and love the product.
Yeah.
They often take customers, like people who've bought the product before, they turn them into salespeople.
Yeah.
So they often take brand ambassadors. I mean, there's a lot of different programs, and we were involved very early on in graduate recruitment programs that got people being brand advocates on campus and then shifting into sales roles. And some of the big FMCG brands are doing that even today. So find people that love the product, then teach them how to sell the product. Why not? Or find people who have bought the product on the other side, buyers, people in the supply chain, get them into it.
So is your approach then much more kind of reflective, listening, questioning?
My attitude is attunement first. And so being chatty is a reaction to be tuned into someone who wants you to be chatty. That doesn't mean, by the way, it's always mirroring. You know, I understand this idea of mirroring. I understand that it might be sometimes to be good to be like the person you want to like you. That makes sense. People like people who like them, right? So it would be useful to be like someone. But if we take Lumina qualities, like we're just talking in that language, if someone's super competitive and you start being super competitive, it's probably not the greatest thing to mirror. So it really depends what you tune into, whether you mirror it or whether you tone yourself down. But that's about being sensitive, being open to adapting. And so sometimes in adapting, you tune up. Sometimes in adapting, you tone down. And it's not always, I just be like the person I'm trying to sell to. That's not always.
So if it's not being like them, what is it? What are you trying to...
Well, sometimes it's being the opposite.
Yeah.
So, for example, if someone's super competitive, sometimes it's being compliant, letting them talk more. If someone's got, like for example, someone has high attention to detail. I could go high attention to detail, or I could recognise that actually maybe to sell this to their colleagues, I need to give them the big picture. Because they're never.
I like that. Yeah.
Because one of the things that people will. I was sold this lie when I was selling photocopiers that you must sell to the man. Now, not only is this a bit misogynistic, because the man was the person with money, authority, and need. And I still meet salespeople who believe this. Like, you've got to find the person with authority. Well, there's very rarely one person with authority. Even when you're in one-man businesses or one-women businesses, there's partners and there's influencers and there's coaches. But in most businesses today, there's actually quite complex decision-making units. And so what we're doing as salespeople is we're coaching people to sell internally. And so sometimes, and this is a good example, if you find someone high attention to detail, high down to earth, blue energy as we sometimes call it, you might want to actually up your yellow with them. And you might not want to up your yellow with them to the point where you're driving them crazy with your big picture ideas.
Yeah, you've lost them.
You've lost them. Yeah. But you might want to recognise their attention to detail could stop this sale in the decision-making unit.
So like, sometimes you want to engage and be like them and connect and have more rapport. And sometimes you want to do the polar opposite, do the paradox, but like collectively, as long as you're still connected, it'll be a more powerful combination. Exactly. And sometimes you're helping them do what was the opposite for them with that other conversation you know they're going to have with other stakeholders or people who are interested in rooms you'll never be in yourself.
Exactly.
You know they're going to be there.
Yeah. So attunement's not a simplistic practice. Attunement is quite subtle. And it's why, you know, in some of the big ticket, you know, I work with some big organizations that sell software, for example, sell technology solutions, sell cybersecurity, for example. These are things that take years to sell. Sometimes contracts take years to sell, and in those situations, they employ very highly skilled, intelligent account managers who do need to very subtly influence across quite a complex unit of people.
What does that look like in terms of, you know, building that attunement and being able to influence people that you're never going to be able to meet, right? You know, you pick up the call with someone, you know, it's a gold lead. If in your case, you know something about them, they know something about you probably, and then you're going into it prepared. What does that look like in terms of that first conversation to be able to work out, how do I need to approach this person?
Well, look, people leave clues everywhere. So, you know, we're in a world where, you know, LinkedIn is just littered with clues. There are tools, by the way, I'm not advocating using them, but there are tools that will literally scrape a LinkedIn
like
profile.
a crystal nose type.
Yeah,
thing.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So crystal nose, it scrapes and it gives you quite a good indication of what this person's personality is. And they'll even give you tips like, you should say this in your email. Now, I think most human beings, if they slow down enough and they just look at a profile, a LinkedIn profile, they can work that out, or anyone's social media. So spending a bit of time, that's attunement, by the way. So if I look at your Instagram profile and I look at your LinkedIn profile and I look at your website and I look at what you chose to write or you chose to let somebody publish on the About Us page on your website, that will tell me enough to be able to go, I understand this person a little bit more now. I could probably, now, if you had a coach, and in for example, when we're talking about these long-term multi-million pound sales, they'll have meetings where they'll talk about what they think the profile they think the IT director might have, what experience they might have. They might have some people in the room that have met him, like the sales engineers, and some people that haven't met him. So they'll create quite a complex map of that person. And it's possible.
Well, I mean, doing that background research, I mean, it almost sounds like you're stalking someone before you know, trying to influence them in a way. But I mean, I guess if you're going into it with the mindset of, you know, trying to add value and with integrity and all that kind of stuff, I mean,
Well, and absolutely you are. And I would expect if you know, we're sending people to negotiate with the Iranian regime, for example, they're flying to where were they doing the negotiations, Qatar or Pakistan. We wouldn't expect to send those negotiators without a little background. I mean, they'll be getting CIE checks, but we would expect them, if they were going to have a high-level conversation about a matter of importance, to understand, even down to, does this person have children? Does this person like dogs? Does this person like, what music do they like? I would want people going into high-level conversations like that to have that kind of information. And it does sound a bit stalky. And my recommendation is not to use it, like not to, you know, email someone and say, I see you have a cockapoo. Right.
I like cockapoos too.
I like cockapoos too. But I think in finding out that someone's got cockapoo, and I'm going to tell you a story about this, because we did a program for a very large consultancy business, and I met somebody in this consultancy business who shares my first name. Now that instantly created a connection for me. Might not have for him, I don't know. Right. We did a data training, we talked, we made some connection. And I then went onto his LinkedIn profile. I then saw that he'd run the London Marathon the year before me. And what's the chances of that? Somebody with the same first name of you having run and then I saw he was wearing exactly the same vest as me, because he was sponsored by he was sponsoring the same charity.
Right.
And he had his name on it. So we literally share the same vest. Right? What's the chance of that? In fact, my daughter worked it out for me. There's more chance of me winning the lottery than meeting someone who had done all those things.
Bet you wish you hadn't met him now. I mean,
sorry?
Bet you wish you hadn't met him now. I mean,
but it's
used up your good luck in the one. Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Right. So the point is, in that specific case, because we were already connected, I did actually reach it. And what's the chances? I've seen this. I saw this on your link. But,
so that was from your research you did before.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was after we had met.
Right,
so
okay,
we had already met. But my point is that had I done that before we met, then we would have had a lot to connect with. I would have known that we were going to connect. But I probably wouldn't have gone up to him and said, we ran the London Marathon the same year. I probably would have waited. Yeah. But knowing that we did that would give us a connection anyway.
Would you try and lead the conversation into ways where the other person would recognize that connection as well?
Well, I'm not sure you need to, because you're that connected. I'm in fact, in this case, I'm sure we wouldn't have needed to, because we have that much common ground. That the fact that we ran the London Marathon in the same year is evidence of our common ground.
Sure.
That we can utilize in any other way, rather than having to say, "Oh, this is our connection." If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess something like your name, right? I mean, that's just coincidence. It means
Yeah.
really nothing, right? I mean, but the fact that you both ran the marathon, that you're both into similar things, I guess that gives you kind of, it might be a values thing or whatever.
Just trying to understand what people are into creates rapport, even when you're not into it. And I'll give you an interesting example. We used to do this exercise when we'd talk about in the opening, we'd actually draw a coat of arms. And in describing this person's coat of arms, this person described that they were a hunter. They were a hunter and they liked shooting deer. Now, I'm a vegetarian, right? And I was thinking, and this guy was actually quite irritating and quite disruptive. So I'm in this training. I've got this guy, doesn't want to be there. I know when someone doesn't want to be in training. This guy did not want to be in training and was the opposite of me. And I didn't really know what to do about it. And so my reaction was, let's talk to him in the break. Let's see if we can get some common ground. So I don't even know what, I just thought I'm going to ask him about, how did you get into hunting? Right. And I just kind of, it came out, and then I thought, maybe I don't even want to know the answer. How did you get into hunting?
Need to kill.
And he described being taken out by his uncle, who was a farmer in the Scottish Highlands. And he described a little bit about the management of those, the responsibility that they feel in managing the land, and the fact that deer are apparently a pest of some description, right? But then he described the time spent with his uncle in nature, being part of nature, the stillness that you need to create in order to hunt a deer. It's not very easy. But you have to understand the wind, because you need to go upwind of them. They're really, really sensitive to sound, so you need to be really quiet. And he said, in doing that, you just become really calm and connected with nature. And then he described this kind of a hunt, and he described the first time he held a gun and had that sense of doing it with his uncle. And at that point, if you'd given me a gun and put a deer in front of me, I would have shot it. Like, I literally would have shot it. And I
would you have eaten it as well?
Well, because I also love my
He hasn't
uncle.
talked about cooking it yet.
I love my uncle. I would, in a way, I remember, I kind of thought, God, I wish I could have spent that much time with Jay, like out in the nature. And the small times that I spent with Jay were a little bit like that. This was Jay, by the way, who convinced me once that watermelons were grown in the water, because we'd got down to the river,
obviously,
and he had put a watermelon in there to chill, and then he'd gone and picked it out. And I honestly believe that. So the point is, my connection with my uncle, my love of nature, those things connected us, and we were able to be attuned. And weirdly enough, really, which after the break, he wasn't so disruptive. Okay. He started to be able to learn.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about building that attunement with someone, when you say, it's being able to find that connection, I mean, there's something almost academic in that, being able to do that research. There's the ability to adapt to who you are. There's the ability to intellectually understand who they are and what they need and what their organization needs. I mean, almost it sounds like you're describing someone who is able to do anything to be able to connect with someone. Is that possible for someone to be able to read who someone is at a personal level, have the intellectual capability to understand what they need, have the ability to influence, have the ability to adapt? It's a bit much, isn't it, to ask of someone?
It's a lot to ask, but I suppose that's what we're asking of people. We are asking of people to let go of yourself for a bit, and be in someone's world. And if you do that, the question supposes it's something that's quite difficult to do. I'm suggesting it isn't. The only thing you need is time. As Stewart said, if you don't have time, it's going to be more difficult. But this is a natural human thing. You put two humans in a room together, eventually they'll fall in love with each other. That's the Stockholm syndrome, isn't it?
Just give them enough time.
Sorry, give them enough time.
Yeah.
So, but over time, and I can remember once being told by my boss that I had to take my most annoying client on a ski trip, and I was like, I'm not taking him. He's like, well, you're not going on the ski trip then. I was like, okay, I'll take him. And I remember sitting on the plane on the way back, thinking, I really like this guy. And the reason was we'd spent lots of time together. And so it's why I tell people to pick the phone up, because you won't spend any time with someone writing an email to them. But when you're on the phone to them trying to work the problem out, you'll spend time with them. So the more we spend time with people, the more we will naturally adapt. All this, the reason we need things like Lumina or any kind of psychometric, right, is not because we don't know how to understand other people. It's because we are trying to understand too many people in our lives right now. We don't need tools to help us understand people unless we're putting ourselves into situations where we need to influence a larger number of people than would naturally be the case. That's what I believe.
Earlier you said you don't advocate for tools like Crystal knows.
I mean, I don't advocate that you use artificial intelligence to speed read someone's personality. I think there are more sophisticated ways. So I think
is that an ethical thing? Is that an accuracy
thing? I think
thing?
you just use your own intelligence.
Right.
I just think I can look at that and I can tell you, I can look at it.
How do you recognize, when you're selling to someone, when you've taken things too far, you've misread someone, or you're behaving in a way that's not very helpful, right? You think you've gone into it understanding the person, how to approach it, but you realize actually I've read it all wrong. How do you kind of roll back in that situation?
It's not easy. I thought you were going to ask, how do you recognize? You recognize when they stop talking to you. You recognize when they stop responding. Yeah. And one of the reasons we train people to be constantly checking in, like non-verbally and verbally, like, is that what I'm confirming, clarifying?
Yeah.
Is so that you're constantly you're able to pick up. So that's the first thing, is can you read whether somebody is what their level of enthusiasm is? When people's levels of enthusiasm are low, you need to step away. And in some cases, you need to set somebody else into the conversation, or someone else. And because we're dealing with complex decision-making units, if it's just if the whole deal is just responsible, is just contingent on two people getting on, you might fail. So you might need to send somebody else in. So that's one of the things that that's why we'll map decision-making units quite carefully, because if one relationship fails, or maybe we'll move on to another relationship, or maybe we'll ask the salesperson to get a sales engineer involved, for example.
And how do you recognize, when you talk about, you see that engagement kind of dwindling, you see that, they don't seem as enthusiastic as you hope they'd be. How do you recognize when it's kind of worth trying to bring that back versus actually this person is just disengaged because they're not interested, they're not outright saying no because they're too polite to? How do you recognize that difference?
You just have to ask some questions. It's always about asking questions. It's always about checking in, finding out, asking, for example, what's the likelihood of this moving to the next stage?
Oh, you still
what
interested?
Would be the next stage?
Yeah.
If
they say no, is that, it's not going to happen. Is that it? You just say, thank you.
Like, for example, let's say, for example, I'm selling a sales program to a group of, to an organization, and my main conduit is the sales manager, and they start to lose interest, and they start to get either cold feet about it, maybe they're nervous about the impact on their, I don't know, right? Maybe they just got too busy. But I'm absolutely convinced, and I've spoken to people in the organisation, I've started selling it in. Am I going to stop because one person has now got cold feet, or maybe one person has got, in this case, for example, maybe they've got a preferred supplier they want to use? Am I going to stop? Because in this case, no. I'll just, in that case, I would go and look at some of the other people I've spoke to, and I'll see if I can push it. So I think, when you talked about Socratic questioning. So Socratic questioning is very simple. It's just the idea that you investigate the answer and you don't accept the answer as so when you ask people what's our biggest challenge in this sales team, people will often say negotiation or closing, and I could then say, oh well, I'll give you a negotiation or closing program, right? But actually I would use a Socratic approach, and I'd say, when you say negotiation, what issues do you have with it? And we would go deeper and deeper, and they'd say, I think we're not sometimes getting the most value. I'd ask, I'll be genuinely interested. Like, what do you mean by, why do you think you're not getting the most value? And then they'll start telling me about the real issues, what they think's really going on in their business. So there were 2 books that sold more than my negotiation, but there were lots of books actually sold more than my negotiation. For 2 weeks, I outsold Donald Trump. I was very, very proud of myself. And then he announced his presidential candidacy, and I've never outsold him since. But for 2 weeks, but one book that consistently outsells mine as well is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is this, he's an FBI hostage negotiator. So it's like full of brilliant stories. Yeah. Most of them not relevant to sales negotiation, but brilliant anyway. He talks about this idea that he calls it tactical empathy, which I somehow grates me, the idea of empathy being tactical.
Empathy is a tool.
Yeah, as a tool. But he talks about this idea that when you use the exact words that someone's used, particularly in this kind of high stakes. So he says, like, if someone is really, you get through to the hostage guy and he says, I'm starving, and you say back, oh, you're hungry, it's an instant mismatch. He says he's trained,
even if they mean the same thing.
They mean exactly the same thing, but they don't come into the brain the same way. What comes into the brain when you say I'm hungry and the other person says, oh, you're starving, is we're different, we speak different languages. What comes out when I use your words is, oh, we speak the same language, and you're listening to the language I'm using, and you're not trying to interpret me, you're literally just understanding what I'm saying. And that's really, really important in attunement. I mean, partly
Gavin, I do this in facilitation, which hopefully is not normally a hostage situation, but if I have someone in a session and they not happy about something, or they've got something's not quite right, I've kind of learned that's the point, not just to listen, but to play back exactly what they say. Yeah.
Because I don't know if you heard, there was that brilliant, years ago, there was that customer service complaint video that was going around. It was an audio, and it was just someone getting really, really angry, and they'd obviously been trained to play back the emotion, but kind of relabel it. So the person, I'm really angry. Oh, I'm really sorry you're annoyed. I'm not annoyed, I'm angry. Oh, I'm really sorry that you don't seem to take it seriously. Just people go crazy, because people do go crazy when they're not listened.
Fully acknowledged, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's an essence of that technique, really. And it is a technique, but it's one that works really effectively. It does need to be done with integrity, though. Like,
there's just one thing that I wanted to just circle back to, and in terms of kind of your approach to your achievement, buoyancy, clarity, understanding personality, being aware of yourself, being aware of other people. It all sounds very good in theory, right? Intellectually, it sounds good, being ethical and all that. Can we actually see an impact on kind of how that impacts the revenue of an organization? Does that actually create better salespeople who are ultimately able to sell more? Does that create a nicer environment within the organization they work for? Can we see the actual impact of what this does?
So you can measure it in a number of different ways. So you can measure it in how people feel. So interestingly, lots of the trainings that we do are engineered, measured by learning and development and HR organizations, and their primary measures are employee retention and employee value and surveys. So a lot of times training is actually measured on how does it make the organization feel about how they're developed and how they feel, and therefore whether they stay and whether they get developed in the organization. That's one way of measuring it. The more practical way of measuring it does it have an impact on people's ability to close deals, shorten pipeline. So when the program's being measured by the sales organization, particularly in these very, very clever, I'm going to say American, but because we deal with a lot of multinational American companies, that they can actually see how long pipeline is, for example. How long does it take from first contact to closing of a deal?
Would your approach not lengthen that, or do you think it's...
No, it would shorten it.
Right.
It would have to shorten it. I mean, they wouldn't be interested if it was going to lengthen it. No, it would have to shorten it.
Yeah.
So you might spend more time in the process, but you wouldn't want to stretch it out.
Okay.
But yeah, so those metrics like length of pipeline, conversion, numbers of conversions, all of those are measurable, and very often in our sales training, that's exactly what somebody at the background is measuring it, and they're showing outputs.
Yeah. And I guess, having that, if you're talking about building the trust, the long-term relationships, then that brings in that predictability, the recurring revenue, and that side of it as well. So Gavin, the approach that you presented to us, understand yourself, understand other people, intellectually understand what they need. There's a lot to it. If I'm a sales leader tomorrow, going back to my team, and I want to take away one thing that you think is the easiest thing to apply, that I can start to see improvement in my sales team's performance, what's that going to be? One thing.
It's got to be to support their salespeople to ask better questions. And that probably means listening to some calls, being with them, giving them feedback, and getting them to practice deeper, more effective questioning.
Can you give me an example? What's a bad question and how can you make that a good question?
I mean, look, the basic poor questions work on assumptions. And so they'll start with a verb, they'll be closed of their nature. So when you're listening into salespeople, you're looking out for when are they making assumptions and when are they closing down the conversation. So they'll be asking something like, is this something that you'd be interested in? Or I wanted to speak to you about your strategy. Is your strategy this? Are you doing this? It's like they're closed questions. They're closing off the conversation. You're looking just to ask them, like, what are your strategic priorities? Rather than, is this your strategy?
What are you looking to do?
And while it seems quite simplistic and obvious, it's the one thing that every time we work on it, it makes a difference to attunement and clarity.
So thank you, Gavin, for your inspiration, for your insights, and for your humour. And thank you to everybody for listening to this. If you've enjoyed this, please do subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. And if you want to put a comment below about future topics you'd like to hear, we'd love to hear from you.